Think about local service clubs today. The Rotarians, the Lions, the Kiwanis. If a community is bleeding, they are the first ones on the scene. They act as the ambulances of our social fabric. Their operational model is built almost entirely on direct action. It's high-volume, hands-on volunteerism designed to treat the visible, immediate symptoms of a problem, whether that's running a vision clinic, stocking a food pantry, or responding to a local disaster. But if you roll the clock back a century, the picture looks completely different. Before mass communication and interstate highways, geography locked people in place. That meant the absolute center of political and economic power in America was the local community. Back then, these clubs operated like informal city councils. The tables were filled with the town's bank presidents, leading attorneys, and Main Street proprietors. They were the strategic architects of their cities. These early members prioritized sustainable community health. They used their professional expertise to design long-term solutions, mapping out town sanitation systems and public infrastructure that would serve the population for decades. So, how did the nerve centers of our local communities transition from rooms full of strategic policymakers into networks of kind-hearted volunteers treating surface-level symptoms? And if the strategists left the local town square, where exactly did they go? The answer lies in the technological and economic surge following World War II. The 1950s broke the geographic boundaries that used to hold a town's leadership together. As industrial logistics and mass production took hold, the economic gravity of the country shifted. Power moved away from the independent local proprietor and towards centralized corporate structures. At the same time, the interstate highway system physically fractured the traditional American town. People began to commute, suburban sprawl accelerated, and the tight-knit cohesion of living, working, and governing in the same square mileage evaporated. This birthed the era of the organization man. The local business owner, who had a lifetime stake in the success of his specific town, was gradually replaced by the corporate branch manager. These new executives were upwardly mobile. Their companies would regularly transfer them to new cities every few years. Because they were constantly being repotted, they rarely developed the multi-generational roots required to lead long-term community planning. As power centralized, the outcome-driven problem solvers looked around. They realized the local town council was no longer the most effective lever for the kind of systemic change they wanted to cause. They packed up their ambitions and moved to bigger stages. They redirected their energy into national advocacy groups headquartered in D.C., corporate boardrooms, and highly specialized think tanks. When that local power elite migrated to the national level, they took their strategic focus with them. This left a strategic leadership vacuum back home in the local chapters. To fill those empty seats, the clubs pivoted. They began recruiting a different psychological profile, the pure doers. These are individuals who derive intense, intrinsic satisfaction from the actual process of helping. They want the visible, hands-on experience of making sure their neighbors are fed. This era created an organizational divide in the civic sector. It separated the groups who find fulfillment in the direct act of service from the elite platforms that focus on engineering systemic results from a distance. What we are left with today is a highly bifurcated social sector, divided by scale and psychological motivation. At the very top, you have the macro-level platforms. This is where the modern reformers live. They operate from afar, dedicating their resources to mapping root causes, designing policy, and attempting to engineer systems. You see this at events hosted by the World Economic Forum. These platforms gather global leaders to shape long-term industry standards and international agendas, but they rarely, if ever, distribute a single bowl of soup or build a local shelter themselves. Meanwhile, down at the micro level, the local doers are running the ambulance. They are the indispensable frontline responders, holding the day-to-day social fabric of their individual towns together by managing the immediate crises right in front of them. The result is a structural blind spot in the middle of our social systems. While global leaders design macro policy and local volunteers manage immediate crises, the local community often lacks the rooted leadership needed to bridge the two, leaving many towns focused on managing the effects of poverty or disease without the local authority to rewrite the rules that cause them. It forces a question for anyone looking to get involved today. Are you a process-oriented doer or an outcome-oriented achiever? because bridging this gap is the only way to return root cause problem solving to the local American town square.